Sanbanan Bafunis. We write in Pilidamus. How was the test? Sweet. Very, very, very simple, eh? I know. Thank you, Sunday. Sweet. Sunday. It wasn't. Why not? What was difficult? Multiple choice. So, which ones would you prefer? Would you prefer the Bala or Pendule than multiple choice? Do you prefer applying? we can also do that. Our next test we can do away with multiple choice. Oh, why? Multiple choice is back on the answer. Okay. I think basically we have been so used to multiple choice such that okay, it's one way of assessment, but sikhona lesidingo sokuthi sihle sishintsha. There is that need to change and also do like your one-word answer, your weekly descriptions and explanations, and also your essay questions, where you are just given a question and then you write an essay. We should also do that. We should be doing that. Application is very important. It's one way of testing, of assessing. So be ready to do that, because at diploma level you might have a lot of these multiple choice. But if you want to further your studies and do your BA, you understand? So in as much as we look shy, but at times you need to do the application. So all right. But I think for now, start together with multiple choice. But the assessment includes all of that. Like I indicated, we'll also be giving you projects to do. Also, now we are testing were you able to grasp the content of this again? Because the project, it is where we also want you to apply. There is also group work. I'm not too sure how much you do that. We also need to do that. It's another way of assessment. Our tests or exams should be timed. It's another way of assessment. So, as a volunteer, and please make it a point of you keep time, because if we write our tests in the morning before we continue with our studies, then the test will be between 8 and 9. 9 o'clock we continue with our lectures. Right. So today we will be starting on Unit 2. Can you have a very quick recap on what we did with lesson 1. What do you remember? Oh, by the way, you were also writing a test. What do you remember that we talked about on lesson 1? Remember, I think we talked about 3 things. Lesson 1 is about the person, that is who. Lesson 2 is about what? Oh, and not lesson, unit. Unit 2 is about who? Is it about the teacher? Then unit 3?
About the Spirit.
Yeah, you are mixing things. So, unit, not lesson or chart. Unit 1 is about what? The person. Who? We are answering the question that says, who is the teacher? The person. And then unit 2, the process of learning. Then the last unit we'll be talking about. Now, these 3 components are very important when we are talking about principles of learning. We have to, number 1, look at the teacher. Then number 2, we have to look at the process. What is the process that is involved in learning? That's what we'll be doing today. And then the last unit, we'll then be looking at what? At the techniques. How then do you do the teaching? So those are the 3 things that will be learning about. So today, let's get on to the process of learning. Now, this is the next one. So it has got 3 lessons. This unit has got 3 lessons. Lesson number 5 will be looking at the theoretical basis of the process of learning. It's in the theory, right? When it comes to learning, what is the process that is involved? The theoretical process. And then lesson number 6, we will look at the biological basis of the process. Now, lapha lesikhumbula stabile class in biology, right? What you learned at high school or wherever you might have learned it, we'll go back and revisit that one. Because when we talk about the process, or rather the principles of teaching, regarding the process now of teaching, we have to know ukuthi engqondweni biologically ingqondo isebenza njani, right? And then the last one will be the biblical basis. Okay, yes, sesikhulumile ngebiology, but livesi ke lona lithini ngendzaba yokufunda. What is the process, the biblical process? Now, let's get on to the theoretical basis of the process and zooming into teaching and learning. And here we are saying from your study books, actually, as an introduction, if you read your study books, it begins with asking crucial questions to say, would you, if you have got a car, would you take your car to somebody who never learned about repairing cars? Can you do that?
No.
Okay? You can't. Why won't you do that? Because if you take your car and bring it to me, I never learned about fixing cars. But if you bring it to me, be sure of one thing, I'll mess it up. Right? Ngendeka imoto ibuyele emuva. Say where sinalo le technique. You understand? So if udzinga kulungisa imoto, uyimikisa ubani kumuntu lofundzile ngekulungisa imoto. Right? So the same thing. I mean, it's nebantu bethu. Nabanye baze we even, for our kids, we even choose which schools. And we make sure that we send them to what? To the best schools. And some schools, they really scrutinize to say, when they employ the teachers, what qualifications do you have? What is your background? What is your experience? Why? Because they want the best teachers. So we also send our kids to schools where we know that the teachers are qualified, right? But here's the question. Why then, when it comes to church, do we take anyone to stand before us and say something? What are we saying? What are we doing? Because the moment I stand before you, if I am not trained, I will speak anything and I will speak anyhow. And in the process, I will lead many people astray. So the issue of learning, it is very important, Bazalwane. Go to school, learn before you can stand before people and say something. Right? And we thank you. Look at what Singh said. You took your time and came to class to do what? To learn. This is very, very important. And don't look down upon this, what you're doing here. And please don't try to do shortcuts. There are no shortcuts in learning. Nikon, there are no shortcuts. So here then, when it comes to teaching and learning, we are saying the best and most effective teachers, they take time to do what? To study the learning process. If you are going to be the best teacher, then you should study about what? The learning process. As a teacher, I need to be aware of that process, right? So, this gentleman, Liamson, he defines teaching as an activity that has the conscious intention. That is what? Conscious intention of and potential for. So these are keywords. The conscious intention, right? And then what again? The potential. So Liamson is saying that teaching is an activity that has the conscious intention of and potential for facilitating learning in another. Dr. Number mean as the teacher, as the facilitator. The conscious intention. You don't just stand up and talk before people. You need to prepare yourself. And if I can tell you how long it has taken me to prepare for this to come and stand before you. So there has to be an intention, conscious intention, and also the potential on the side of the learner, in as much as now good teacher teaching it. And then start here now, he then states that learning is an enduring change in behavior. Now, Naskulmanga teachings, it has to be, it is an activity that has the conscious intention, but learning, it is an enduring change in behavior. In other words, learning wouldn't have taken place unless there is what? There is change. Change in what? In behavior. In other words, some people they would say, I mean, we talked the other day in our first session to say teaching is for transformation, right? Mm-hmm. We teach to transform. In other words, when I stand before you and I give lectures, the sole purpose is that with the information I'm giving you, it should be able to help you to do what? To change and be the better person. So that's why Stank then is saying it is, when you talk about learning, it is an enduring change in behavior. Bazalwane, lamahlathi leswabonako kubafundisi namuhla akubendeki le nto. Siwana yini? Because umfundisi wahlala phasi wafunza, obviously i-change itawuba njani? Itawuba khona. And lalela, uthi sikanti lapha, it is enduring change. Yinguquko leta metima lepita tingo letitsite kuwe. Nikhona bazalwane? Endlule athi, or it is in the capacity to behave in a given fashion which results from practice or other forms of experience. So that is learning and teaching according to these two gentlemen. Okay. Now let's talk about reason. Okay, now we are talking about, remember, we're talking about the theoretical basis of the process of learning, right? Now, nasikhuluma ke ngale theory, bazalwane. Thank you, sir. Now, nasikhuluma ngale theoretical basis, we will talk about these two things, learning and sitawufunda nema-theories that develop ngilabanye bebazalwane, should I call them bazalwane? Nome asibabite ngema-theories. So we'll talk about reason or experience. Now, if you are going to talk about theories, bazalwane, we have to ask ourselves the following questions. Number one, when it comes to reason, because as scholars, are you okay? It's okay, bazalwane, to ask questions as mafundis and even as scholars. Okay? Ask questions, because by asking questions, it will make you to dig for more answers, more information that will give you answers. So, number one, where does knowledge come from? Does one learn through reasoning? Irrationalism. In other words, now doubt when if you are going to tell me that the sun rises from the east, I should be able to ask you, what is the rationale for you to say that? Why? Give me reasons why you will say that is the east. And when I ask you such questions, it simply means we are supposed then to think deeper. You need to justify why you are saying what you are saying. Right? That is reasoning. That is what we call rationalism. So we are saying, does it help, asking questions, does it help you to learn? Or through experience, what we call empiricism. Ngabe kufunza kuta ngekubuta imibuto and then ufune more information, noma kufunza utange kokuthi uhlale phasi uthole lwati. Ngicabanga ukuthi if I were to ask you, kufunza utanga kuphi kulelo kwethu? Does it come to reasoning or does it come to learning, sitting down and have the experience? That's it. Huh? Which one of the two do you think is important for you to learn? Reason or experience? Mfundisi?
It can be both.
It can be both.
Yes.
Justify your answer. Why do you say both?
Like when I'm alone, I can be able to reason, dig for information from some certain sources, but then it cannot be enough unless I've got someone who has got experience on that particular item that I'm getting information about.
Okay? Is that okay? Wena bongathini mfundisi? Nguphi lo lokuyithola ofungazi ukuthi kuyakuletha kufunza? Usacabanga so vele unesandla yes.
Oh, I think I can agree with Mr. Sabitz on this one, but it can be both, it can be experience. But I think what comes first is experience, because what you experience can lead you to acquire learning, because from your experience you begin to understand that I need to learn.
Okay.
So experience can expose you to learning.
Okay.
So I think
But bottom line, we are saying both, we need both.
yes.
Okay. Now, the theorists, they ask themselves such questions, and then in asking these questions, their curiosity then led them to what we now call the research process. Lokufuna kwati ngiko lokwenzeka ukuthi besebenza njani bayowenda tincwaningo, get more information. Right? Now, and from their research, they then formed what we now call theories. In other words, it's theory. You do not just come up with a theory. Your theory needs to be based on a certain research that you have made. So from their research, they formed theories. How do people learn? Now, there is this gentleman, let's see one Plato, or Plato, it's called. Plato, he believed that true knowledge was innate, which means that, according to Plato, true knowledge is something that you are born with. Nicole, uthi Plato yena no, lwati ngitalwa nalo. We're just talking about reasoning and experience. Yes. But according to Plato, he believed that true knowledge is innate. You are born with. And that learning occurred when one pulled that knowledge. Are you getting this? Yeah. According to Plato. Uti Plato, man, this is one philosopher in the ancient Greek world. So Uti Plato, no. When we talk about Nazana in knowledge you are udalo wati wena. But kuze kuti ufunze uthole kufunza then kubita ukuthi bese so udrosa lo lwati lo utelwe nalo. Nasa udrosa ke lo lwati ulibeka enzaweni la utoba aweke ukuthi ngaphi nako. And basalwane nyapi these things now kunaka ukulandzela kahle kuyayini sense. I can make an example. Okay, yes.
The question is
yeah. These are just theorists, not Christian. They were not in the spiritual realm, as we would say today. Abebhala nje angumuntu fanana nami nawe. Abuka tinto atirizina. So he wasn't in the spiritual, looking at things in the spiritual or with the spiritual eye. Mm. Yeah.
So that's not so impacts our knowledge to understand it better.
Okay.
Yes, rather than saying without knowledge, because without being caught.
Yeah.
You can come when you have to
Mm.
but also full of tell what they do. But you can also put this one, we will tell.
Okay.
So I make the always say, I understand your wisdom. Yes, you can.
Okay.
Knowledge.
Okay. That is the last lesson. That is lesson 7. So let us not rush into that, because now we are talking about the biblical process of learning. So we'll then talk about all of those things. But now, sisabuya emveni yalo. Nicola, let us not spiritualize this. Sisakhuluma nje ngelwimi leli-ordinary. Kwekuthi laba bantu, these are people who sat down and tried to think kwekuthi, when you talk about learning, the learning process, what is involved? What brings about learning? And then Plato yena uthi no, umuntu utala anelwati. But lo lwati ngalokuthi liyahlala, it lays dormant until such time lapho khona simfundzise khona ngalesikhathi simfundzisa liyatamatiseka lo lwati lonalo, and then soyaqala manje sobona into ngalenye indlela. That is according to Plato. That knowledge, it has to be pulled out within you. Alright. And then there's another one, Aristotle. Yena uti, he believed in the use of reason. Lona uti, une knowledge, lotalana, Plato on it. Aristotle yena uti, he believed yake is extending, no, 70s are published there. Right? So he believed in the use of reason, but it was for the purpose of giving meaning to data or information gathered from the environment through experience. Uthi-ke manje Aristotle, le reason lena awuyisebenzisi from the air, but uyisebenzisa for the purpose of giving meaning. In other words, when you look around, you see what you see. And then the moment you sit down and think and reason about what you are seeing, then you'll be able to give meaning. Then, to Plato then, the origin of knowledge was within a person, and it was obtained through reasoning. But to Aristotle, knowledge was in the world. Plato, it is within me. But now Aristotle, no, outside of you. So if now upon kubamba kanjalo utakhona sitakala even no mese kuchamna test. So knowledge was in the world around and was obtained through experience. And though he did not deny that reason had a role to play in giving meaning. So bonke abaphikisana. But in your textbooks, we've got this table, which simply compares reason and experience. So la magama ke asetshenziswa interchangeably angakudidi nakukhulunywa nge-reasoning, kukhulunywa nge-rationalism, right? Nakukhulunywa nge-experience, kukhulunywa nge-empiricism. Right. So knowledge, we are saying knowledge rises through the mind, while the external world may provide information. Learning ibeseyenteka from the working of the mind. And empiricism, yona, which is experience, we are saying experience is the only form of knowledge, and learning occurs through association that forms mental patterns. So now with our theories, nitawafunza nibone ukuthi Descartes uthini, Locke uthini, Immanuel Kant uthini, George Bhekie, David Hume, all of those guys bakhona, and ngamunye nangamunye wabo kune contribution lekayendako in terms of both knowledge and experience, or rather reason and experience. So you will read in detail from your study guides. Now let us look at the behavioral theories. Now some of the early theories looked at behavior. Nikhumbule ukuthi sikhuluma ngala, we're talking about these theories. We are still trying to see how learning occurs. So the reason we are talking about these theories, ngiyathi bafundisi bathi siyabi lapho sijahe university. Livesi khona abazalwane eliningi. But kumcoka lokho sik-understand. Nikona. So now behavioral theories, some of the early theorists looked at behavior and how it was formed. They then believed that behavior was the best evidence of learning. Nababuga those theories. They decided, or they learned, that behavior was the best evidence of learning. So now I'm start buga ukuthi did learning occur? We'll look at what? At the behavior. Because learning, the change of behavior is an indicator that learning has occurred. So now we are saying the basic principle, therefore, of behaviorism was the principle of stimulus and response. So now the principle behavior, it is the principle of stimulus and response. Now, theories, but chapter, the following chapter or lesson, saying into the scientific or biological kind of stuff. So, but now we are saying behaviorism did not bother with how one understands, but rather with how one acts in order to get corrected answers. So now behaviorism, ya inzaba understand yabeke eceleni, but kwabuka ukuthi tini for utenda kanjani. Right? Because the concern here, it is in behavior, not what you understand that in. So the concern, it did not look how one understands, but how one acts. Now the two most famous theories of classical condition were a Russian. You should learn more on this. You can also go on YouTube and learn about these theories. So there is what we now called Ulama theories. There is what we call classical conditioning. Now, the two most famous theories of classical conditioning were a Russian, Pavlov, and John B. Watson. So, wakhulunywa ngabanikazi be classical conditioning. Bowathi ukuthi sikhuluma ngaPavlov na John B. Watson. Now, when we talk about classical conditioning, what are we talking about? Kumbula, we are still trying to look at inzaba behavior. Now, in classical conditioning, a conditioned behavior was seen as an automatic process in which a response occurred to a given stimulus. A conditioned behavior. In other words, it's not saying, yi-behavior leyenteka ngobe usesimeni lesitsite. Nikhona kami? So we are saying that labo classical condition, the conditioned behavior, it is seen as an automatic process. Kusho ukuthi kuyatendelela lento, but lo kwenda ukuthi wende kanjalo ngilesimo lokiso. In other words, awucabangi lutho, but lesimo sikwenda behaving ngalendlela le. That's classical conditioning. Are you okay, Bazalwane? In other words, what we are saying here, we are saying your response, the way you do things, there was a stimulus. You are only responding to lo. Okay. However, the stimulus and response had to be compatible with the desired behavior. Now, when we look at Pavlov's classic work, before you come with a theory, research you don't just come up with a theory, test. But after sokucabangile, hamba ukuteste. When the pain you don't see it, ubuyeke uthi oh vele bukanje. So the same thing ngenalens about classical conditioning. The stimulus and the response had to be compatible. Okay, Pavlov Lona, his work was with dogs and other animals. Now, Watson then believed that through conditioning, he could take a healthy infant and train him or her to become any specialist desired. Say what? Lo Watson. Uthi ke yena nakukhulunywa ngalendzaba ya classical conditioning. Uthi yena ungamniketa noma ngumuphi umntwana. Ngihlale naye, enasehleli naye ngitamtrainer abe litututhu kule area lendabe ngittrainekile. In other words, according to him, wonke umuntu unepotential yekwenda noma ngabe yini. Are you okay? So he believed that through conditioning, he could take any healthy infant and train him to become any specialist desired. Through what? Through classical conditioning. So now there is the second one, still under the behavioral theories. The second one is operant conditioning. And this one was made famous by B.F. Skinner. Now, when we talk about the conditioning process again, it involved a series now of stimuli, response, and reinforcement. Please go through your study guides because some of these things are further clarified in your study guides, these theories. And also do your own research, go to YouTube, watch videos on this one, and with October even more clear. So Skinner manje, the conditioning process involved in a series of stimuli, response, and reinforcement. In other words, say ihlukile classical, because the classical ikhuluma ngestimuli na response. But this one, it is stimuli, response, and reinforcement. In other words, uyayi-check-a ukuthi nasithi stimuli iresponda kanjena kwente kanjena but ufuna phinde ubuyele emuva u-reinforce ubone ukuthi vele bekungasi i-false alarm yilo loyibonile. Siyabana. Now, reinforcement therefore strengthens the response. Njengoba ngithi you redo the process angithi. And if you redo the process, then the response letawendeka. Itawuprova lokuthi kungiko lo lokwendeka ekuqaleni noma akusiko. And nase kuhlukile kwesibili kusho ukuthi kufuna phindze ubuyele phasi ubuke ukuthi kukwende kanjani vele. So we are saying then therefore reinforcement strengthens the response and increases the possibility of it being repeated. It was a matter of shaping one's behavior. Okay, there's an example here. Sisakhuluma ngalezaba ye-behaviorism. Eklasini uyabekisa the author of the study guide is saying behaviorism in the classroom is seen in the way teachers reward students. A student learns best when they are actively involved in the process. It's another way to reinforce e-learning. That ngithi nje nona kuyathingwa nje lapha nami. Ngimbude imibuzo lokho esibhala na i-test bese ngithi lo thole 100% ngamniketa 100 emalangeni. Right? The next test that you'll be writing, you will all want to get 100 emalangeni. And what are we doing by doing that? Sizama ku-enforce tinto letitsite kuwe. Uyabona ukuthi normally you wouldn't push yourself ukuthi uthole 100. But ngoba sekubekwe manje into letsite. Angithi? Nawe uyayifuna lelo then ufaka onke ke manje. In other words, so sesisebenzisele le-carrot. Kuze ukuthi wena ufake amandla akho ugcine u-achieve nakubongeke uku-achieve. So however, if a student is ridiculed or criticized whenever they answer a question, they will quickly withdraw and not participate. So we have to know about these things so that as a teacher you know how to motivate your own students. Now, we see after behavioral theories, let's quickly go through cognitive learning. Now, cognitive theories are also part of what is called constructivism, which means that individuals form or construct what they learn, which is learning automatic. So the theory, cognitive theories, yona ibuka ukuthi njengebanga kunema-constructs, kunetithombe lesitidvebako engcondvweni. And letithombe lesitidvebako engcondvweni ngito lelekelela letibonakala ku-behavior yethu. Nikhona ka? Now, cognitive theories therefore focus on the internal mental processes and how the mind understands. So once you see cognitive, then it means something that has to do with your mind, right? So these are internal mental processes and how the mind understands. Nangibona lele nkubonako ingqondo ishutha sithombe. Angithi ka? Then from that picture that has been formed, then ingqondo yakhona ukuthi bese interacta nalesithombe sekwenteka those internal processes. Now nakhona ke kunebanikati balama cognitive process learning theories. And one of them is Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget divided life into 4 stages of development. So let's talk about learning, right? I know ngenteka nibe bored kakhulu ngoba but we'll do the best ekuthenini nikhone ukubamba lelo sikusho. Now, Jean Piaget then divided life into 4 stages of development. That is, stages of abilities of learning. Lo Jean Piaget then yena ke wabuka ukuthi for learning to take place, it has to go through different stages, right? And the first one is what we call the sensory motor, which means for a child between 0 to 2 years, there are spontaneous actions and those spontaneous actions are in response to one's environment. Umntwana nakase mncane nje from 0 to 2 years. Akadilupha ngithi. Khumbula phela we're talking about the learning process. So 0 to 2 years akadilupha. But leleka kwendako umntwana from 0 to he or she simply responds kuleyo environment yakhe ukuthi ithini ikanjani. Nikhona mos. So leyo response yakhe is spontaneous. Leyo response yakhe is spontaneous. Sorry about that. It's spontaneous. And then that is the sensory motor. Then the second one, the second one, the second stage, it is pre-operational. That is between 2 and 7 years. Lapho lo mntwana sowusebenzisa what we call imaginative behavior. Niyabona? In other words, the kid between 2 and 7 uphila eveni lema imaginations. Uphila in the fantasy land. Yena irreality kuye exist. Nikhona between 2 and 7 years. He can't distinguish fantasy from reality. Ngiko phela angisikhulume nge-environment 0 to 2. Ngiko yena nemlilo utawenda njani? Utawuthinza. Because kuye nakabona umlilo ubona into lenhle. And then the moment akuthinza uyashisa lo, that is when learning happens. Oh, this one kuyalimatana. So tawathi uthi lokho akwenzi njani? So according to Piaget, this is how learning takes place. Okay, cognitive. Now, the third one that is now ubuka development environment, approximately from 7 to 11 years. Then the child, he or she begins to grasp the concepts. Some tell 7 to 11 years, some tell because then going say developing. So kumile fantasy land, things was born as real and as true as they are. That is 7 to 11 years. And then from 11 upwards, what we call formal operational. Now the child is able to think and form hypotheses. He's able to have his or her own opinions from 11 years. Now, why are we learning about these things? How should we even handle the children that we have? Right? No, but we see 0 to 2 years, umntwana akati lutho. Yena udependa nje environment yakhe. 2 to 6 or 7 years, umntwana still use fantasy land. 7 to 11, Suyaqala manje. Okay. So that is according to Piaget. Then another one, in theory, leyeta na Benjamin Bloom. Then ake imtoka even nagit sinesifundisako. Because he developed what is known today as Bloom's taxonomy of learning. Now, this taxonomy of learning, it has got levels of learning. Different levels of learning. La khona la velako la. Time what's the time now? But it in chapel will be at 10 to Namo. So Sikumbu. 10 to what? 11. Okay. But it's in a status 30 then I'll quarter to 1. Okay. So then phindze kube na Jerome Rana. Lona ke he is a developer of the discovery method of learning. He believed, Rana believed that learners construct new ideas based on what they already know, and they even go beyond. Are you talking me? Ma? Benjamin Bloom. Okay. Page Banimatinian. Page 64. What is it that you don't understand, Media? The taxonomy. Let's go to Blue. Piaget, Brunner, Levosky. Did you say 64? Piaget. Okay, Benjamin Bloom. He developed, Bloom's taxonomy. He made a study of educational objectives and understood the importance of writing and using objectives. Okay, the Bloom's taxonomy, Alina Kunjani. Just a moment. Now the pyramid, the Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. It also see when I met them, just to bring a bit of an understanding to what you're talking about. Imcoka ikakhulu la ka-teaching. Now it takes forever. Project from here. Mbonakali. I wanted to show you this pyramid, yes. Let's say, this is the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, here's the Bloom's taxonomy. According to Bloom. So this is a reading skills pyramid according to Bloom. So what he is basically saying is that nangabe uyafundziswa lokungibona ku-ultimate ukuthi khona sifike at the stage where we comprehend lesifundiswa khona ngithi. But for us to get here, we need to start here. What happens here is, number one, it's a combination of hearing what you see, auditory processing, verbal processing, speech. This is just my foundational skills I'm talking. Siyabona. Kuze e-learning yendeke, you need all of these skills. Visual processing, speech, fine motor, vocabulary, educational background, attention, emotional ability, and also cognitive skills. So you need these foundational skills, because without these foundational skills, comprehension, you won't get there, right? And then after the Lama skills, the other foundational, then there is what we call the phonological awareness, right? What are we talking about? We are talking about hearing individual syllables, syllables. And we are also talking about hearing individual words, hearing whether words rhyme. So this is the second level. La kucreateka khona i-awareness. Letawendiwa ukuthi you are possessing these skills. So once i-awareness created, then there is what we call the phonemic awareness. My awareness is dawala two. In other words, lapha sekusebenta lokuthi manje lo lokuvile wena uyakhona, are you able to manipulate it ilethe umcondvo lotsite. Niyabona lo? So waze wakhona ukuthi ukumanipulate kulethe umcondvo lotsite, that awareness, then you will be able kufika besigaba lesi la so wena inde khona lapho so communicator then you connect sounds to written letters. Lolokuvile waba aware ngako, and then wakhona ku manipulator, then you connect sound to written letters. And then above that there is what we call fluency. Then you'll be able to read quickly and express. Then if you are able to read, connect my sound when they sense let's see, then comprehension will take place. Once comprehension takes place, then the learning will take place. So the pyramid learner, they are setting this one Bloom. Good define ukuthi e-learning yendeka kanjani. Nikhona mos? Okay. This is here, this is Jerome, yes. Construct new, then the next one is book cognitive learning theories. There's David Alsuber. Then David Gayer, he proposed the use of advanced organizers, which were connectors or bridges that were provided ahead of the teaching to help learners cross over to the learning, to the new learning. So according to Alsuber, waproposa ema-organizers. Lama-organizers bekaba ngema-connectors or bridges lekenda ukuthi kufundzisa kwenteke kuze ukuthi kube ne-new learning leyenteka. And then there is also Vygotsky. He believed that although everyone had the natural abilities, outside of the natural abilities was another possibility for learning if one was given assistance. Vygotsky yena uthi wonke umuntu noma ke cishe wonke umuntu unalo likhono lekwenta into. And ngetulu kwaleli khono lonalo natural kune possibility ukuthi usengafunza nalokunye futhi na utawukhona kusitaka. And then bese kuba Sternberg Robert, he discovered that traditional tests for measuring one's intelligence were not appropriate for everyone. Ngiyamthanda le Sternberg ngoba sometimes kumelula. Like besikhuluma nje in the morning we were talking about the different assessments that we do. Labo multiple choice angithi. Nabo application. Describe, explain. So some of you were saying no, we are okay with the multiple choice. Are you aware that we learn differently? Yeah? Some of you, they learn better when given an opportunity to apply what they have learned. So if kutaba multiple choice, e-learning kuye aendeke. So ngiyamthanda lo Babelona because he discovered that traditional tests for measuring one's intelligence were not appropriate for everyone. He then noted that even when people tested low on the traditional tests, they could still give evidence of great intelligence in other ways. Yeah? So that is Sternberg. Are we okay? I don't want to get to the biological basis. Can we do this one when we come back? Nyalo ngifuna kubona nje ukuthi sikuvile ilo lesicetha ukukhuluma ngakho before we continue, and we shall continue after safuna kubona nama theories ukuthi siwabamba. Is it okay? Right. Sitawenda kanye ke lo. But nje ngifuna kuyibona lenzaba ukuthi iyevakala yini. Is that okay? We are still learning. And this kind of learning is very important. Sorry? What was that? Buane utawela ubhale nje. Ubhale nje wena noma awubhali lutho. Uyathika nje. Kumele ngilabe ngikubudile uyathika wena ukuthi nangu lokunika. Ngiyobe sithi kumcoka bakithi lokho ukuthi ube ngilomunye ube ngumuntu lodaba eklasini, because now ngeke ude eklasini 30 minutes nje sisafuna ukutesta ukuthi lesikhulume ngako kuvakele yini. So let's go. Question number 1. Wena utawuvela ubhale nje ukuthi uthika uyathika ne la kufanele uthike khona ABC uyokuthi answer yakho ngubani. So according to Eisler and Hebenans, what directly affects teaching practice? Number 1, is it the classroom size? Is it the teacher's salary? Is it understanding of the learning process or student motivation? Abonabani? Important. Maybe. Uthi manje la mnguna nginikete 10 minutes inkonze bese siyabuya. Nithi nini? Uyavuma wena. Wena ungima. Ndawo yanikhohlile. Uthi lo munye ndawo yanikhohlile. So insando yeningi ke ithini manje? Stubele. So number 1, classroom size, lemtokwa, no teacher's salary. Understanding of the learning process, student motivation. Nguphi loku director, loku affector directly teaching practice. Number 2, Liam Singena defines teaching as any activity that entertains students. Teaching any activity that entertains students. Any activity with conscious intention and potential to facilitate learning. Memorization of facts. Teaching as the memorization of facts. Teaching as delivering lectures only. Teaching as any activity that entertains, any activity with conscious intention and potential to facilitate learning, and memorization of facts and delivery of lectures. Number 3, which 2 elements are emphasized in Liamson's definition of teaching? Knowledge and skills, intention and potential, discipline and control. Highlight. Discipline and control, definer teaching, grades and exam. Grades and exam out Single eliminated in one. Right, number 4. You know, I didn't know what discuss. You have to tap away, you know, okay, Scan's definition of learning includes which of the following? Does it include temporary change in behavior? Out jelly. Enduring change in behavior due to practice or experience, memorization of facts only, passive listening, out jelly. Scank's definition of learning includes which of the following? Ake sesibuke-ke irrationalism versus empiricism. Welcome Mfundisi. Mane sisa nakusana ngasijoyina nje. Sisa review na besiphetha ukufunda. So rationalism versus empiricism. So Plato believed that knowledge was acquired through experience. Knowledge was innate and accessed through reasoning. It was dependent on teachers. Last one, based on memorization. You can delete the last one. Sengushele 3. You can even delete the third one. Oh, so Selena too. Oh, we are here now. Then Aristotle emphasized knowledge is innate only. He emphasized reason gives meaning to experience. He emphasized experience is unnecessary. He emphasized that learning is automatic. Aristotle, that's one of the theories responsible. Innate only, reason gives meaning to experience. Experience is unnecessary, which is wrong. Learning is automatic. That's another wrong line. Number 7. Which philosopher said, I think, therefore I am? I think, therefore I am. Is it Locke? Is it Kant? Is it Descartes? Or is it Hume? Ngiyaqombela lokho. Kumele thatha lebegcina nje ukuthi Hume. Ungayishayi ngato lo. Right, number 8. Locke's concept of mind at birth was full of innate ideas, blank slate, pre-programmed with instinct, shaped only by reason, at birth, now reasoning. Reasoning is level upwards. That's how you eliminate incorrect answers. There are those who are obvious. And then let's look at the behavioral theories now. When again? Oh. You start on Locke, then there's a bank Kent, Descartes, and Hume. Number 8 is so many.
No.
Ah, Hassan. Hassan. Manisho mama. So only bala prepare. Locke's concept of the mind at birth was full of innate ideas, blank slate or tabula rasa, pre-programmed with instincts, shaped only by reason. Then number 9, behavioral theories. We are saying behaviorism is primarily based on stimulus and response, cognitive reasoning, emotional development, spiritual growth. Then number 10. Are we okay? Pavlov classical conditioning, it focused on conscious decision making, automatic responses to stimuli, moral development, discovery learning. Nangabe ungivile kuthi ngikhohlele kuphi, that's the answer. What bomb is? Then number 11, fasting. Inkinga vele ndaba fast ngoba buka nje ngazuthi usafuna emanothi ngeke uthole la. Vele ke ndaba fast ke nawe kanjani. The number 11, Watson believed conditioning could do what? It could train any healthy infant into any specialist, only work with animals, be limited to memorization, replace reasoning entirely. The obvious kakhulu answer. Lo ngathi ufuna kucabanga nje, ufuna ukufeyilisa. Ngicabanga into lethi ngakucaca. Into lengathi ngicaca. Then Skinner's operant conditioning yona ya emphasize ini. Is it punishment only? Is it reinforcement to shape behavior, passive observation, ignoring mental processes? Skinner's operant conditioning. Siyavamisa nje lokuthi naze ngathi cha kulokunye bese lokulandzela ukuba ngilolokulandzela. Cognitive theories. Now, Piaget's development include what? Number 1, sensory motor. Niyakhumbula ukuthi sibale kwabang4. Singantshela. Sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational. Infant, child, teen, adult. Norma, knowledge, skills, attitudes, values. Norma, input, process, output, feedback. Hey, bayadida nalabandaba. Bakutshele i-answer bese nje sebayadida nje ngicumbe into le-useless. Sebangena nje bo-infant nabo-child. Alright, then number 14. Bloom's taxonomy includes objectives in the following. Is it cognitive, affective, psychomotor domains, or spiritual, emotional, physical domains, or rational, empirical, behavioral domains, or head, body, soul domains? Go ahead for it. Number 14. Right, then number 15. Bruner's discovery method yona emphasizer in memorization of facts. Learners construct new ideas based on prior learning, passive listening, teacher-centered instruction. Method ya Brenner yona emphasizer Then number 16. Ausubels, advanced organizers were designed to do what? Number 1, entertain learners, prepare learners to integrate new knowledge, replace teaching, simplify exams. Yebo. Number 17. Usele Mphephethe. Uyathanda kusala. Ngindlela utobona ngala kugcineni. Akusabonakala.